What's up, guys? It's Grandmaster here, one of the founders of the Dojo. I'm going to pass it over to our in-house developer, Profound, so that he can quickly introduce himself and start the educational AMA.
Yeah, so I started my crypto journey probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago. Probably like most of you found just a hype token on TikTok, Twitter, whatever it is, and for me it was SafeMoon. And I made a decent amount of money in SafeMoon. I got in really early, and from there I started going into all the different shit coins. And when you start with such a hype token like that, you start to think it's easy. And I found out very fast that not everyone in the crypto space is friendly or has great intentions. And so I started getting really curious and started going into. From my previous experience, I had like 5 years on and off being a developer. So I started getting really curious, looking into blockchain, how exactly it works, how people like hide things like scams and stuff like that. And then I started launching my own tokens. And that's where I met Grandmaster probably I think just about a year ago now. I launched a Halloween token, and him and a few members from the dojo came in, and we were talking in voice chat. Um, so yeah, so I joined the dojo, and very quickly it just was kind of a different kind of group. Like most groups you're in, they're not very like helpful. They're not like a family, and the dojo was just different. And I kind of quickly just took on like a role, not really the in-house developer, but whenever anyone had questions or anything like that, they would just come to me. And then after Grandmaster took a break and he started the Discord, we just started talking more, becoming friends more. And just recently, we both kind of had the same idea where we really wanted to not just have a call channel like you said before, but really teach people that are new to the space how to make their own way and not rely on other people. And so that's kind of why we're starting this educational content. So this is going to be kind of like our first educational kind of content. So for a lot of you guys that are more experienced, some of this may be kind of basic to you guys. But our goal here, like we said, is kind of to make it so that anyone that comes in can start from the beginning, learn all the basics, and then we'll start going into like more and more detailed stuff as we go on.
Yeah, exactly. There's going
Um,
to be content for every level of investor here. I know even a lot of influencers and people who are experienced in the space. There are a lot of things that maybe they could learn as well, and then that's sort of why we're covering a range this time around of newer concepts and also a lot of uh, basic things as well, basic and advanced. It'll be a mix.
Yeah. So basically, the goal today is going to be so I don't know how many of you guys are like new to ETH or are experienced in ETH or whatever, but our goal today is basically going to be for like people that are coming into ETH and want to be in the beginning of calls rather than waiting on influencers to call stuff and buying the top every time. We're going to kind of go through like what you can look for on deployed contracts, how you can tell like what makes something stand out as good, what makes something stand out as bad, and just kind of what we're looking for as we're going through things. But first things first, I'm just going to start going through like the basics of Etherscan, just so that when I get into the more detailed stuff after, I don't have a ton of questions.
Yeah,
Um,
we've noticed that a lot of people in the space, especially like the ones that are coming in newer, that they don't even know what BSC scan is or Etherscan is and how to read on-chain transactions, like in and out transactions. They don't really. So it's like we'll go over the basics first, and then we'll cover the more advanced stuff as well to help out those who are looking to get into ETH plays a little bit earlier, any play really, and to avoid getting scammed. And we'll do some stuff pointers there, in that regard as well.
so for anyone that doesn't know, I'm sure most of you do, but this is Etherscan, basically just an explorer that shows like anything and everything that happens on the blockchain. By the way, if I'm going too fast or if you miss anything, I'll try to keep an eye on AMA questions, so just let me know in there. But I'm just going to kind of go through all the basics of a transaction, what blocks are, and all that kind of stuff. So obviously the blockchain, as you guys know, is a chain of blocks. And in each block, you can see it shows all the blocks on the side here. Each block contains like anywhere from 50 to 300 transactions. So I'm just going to pull up a transaction here to show you guys. You can still see this, yeah?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Cool. So each transaction obviously has a hash. It's going to be like 40 or 64 digits long, and it's basically just like you could think of it as like a barcode. And it's just basically it's going to bring you to this transaction every time. It's just like an identifier. So that's going to be the first thing in here. If you're looking up a transaction, you're going to use this number. And then you can see the block number, not super important, and then the timestamp here. And then there's a bunch of information that's inside of here. This actually just got added, and I don't even think it's on BSC scan, but it just makes it easier to tell what's going on in the transaction. From obviously is going to be who originated the transaction, and this is something to keep an eye on. I'm going to touch on it a little bit later, but sometimes transactions and things like that can be spoofed, so you want to always keep an eye on who it's from. And then the two, this can either be a contract or it can be a wallet. And obviously this is where the transaction is sent to. And then I'm going to go over this whole section here in a minute. I just want to go over the rest of this stuff and then I'll show you guys like how to track the transfers.
Perfect.
So the value here is going to be, let me pull up a buy transaction so you can see. But you can see how much Ether was sent with the transaction, and this would be the same for BNB. The transaction fee here is how much you actually paid in total gas for this transaction. The gas price, so I want to touch on this. A lot of people get this whole section here confused. So the gas price on ETH is a little bit different than people that are coming from BSC. So you have your gas price, which is the actual, you'll hear it referred to as GUE, and this is the actual amount that you're paying per gas on the transaction. So the gas price is the amount you're paying per, and basically like your cost per gas. And then your gas limit is a little bit different. The gas limit is actually like it's like a preset number that contract uses, and it's basically like the cost of the how many gas you have to pay for the transaction. So a lot of people when they're sniping or when they're trying to snipe, they'll up this gas limit, but it doesn't actually do much. You can pay, even if you paid 2 million on this transaction, it's only going to use this 141K. So you don't really need to ever touch this gas limit. You just need to make sure that it's high enough. And then on ETH, like I was saying, it's a little bit different. So on BSC, there's just this gas price, and none of this other stuff matters. On ETH, I don't remember exactly how long ago, maybe like a year ago, they implemented a new way to
About a
do
year
it.
ago, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, each block has a base GUE, and you have to pay this no matter what. So you're always going to pay this, whatever the block is. It changes from time to time. You can see it up here. You're always going to pay this GUE, and then there's two extra settings that you can add on. So there's the max GUE, which is basically the max that you're willing to pay over this. So if this were to go up to 12, this transaction would fail. And then there's the max priority, which you can think of as like a tip. So on ETH, if you're wanting a transaction to go through really fast, this is what you want to mess with. Is you basically want to tip the miner, or not miner anymore, validator, a little bit extra. So basically, if you wanted this transaction to go through really fast, you wouldn't touch the rest of this. You would just put your priority up to 10, 15, 20, and that would make it go really fast. And that's basically what, like, when you talk, if you ever hear the term front run, that's basically what they're doing is they're copying the transaction, but they're upping this tip so that they can get it in front of you. And then vice versa, if you were sniping and you wanted to like follow the dev, you want to make sure that your priority is the same as the dev, because otherwise you're gonna front run him and then you won't get in behind him like what your goal is. And then down here there's just a bunch of extra information. Nunts is basically like how many transactions you've sent on that wallet. So if you sent 63 and you sent a new transaction, then nunts will be 64. And then this is your position in the block. If you're ever wondering like why you're in front of the developer or why you're after the developer, this is where you would check your position in the block. And then input data, I'm actually going to come back to here in a second, and I'll kind of show you guys this section. So when you're looking at a transaction, basically this is what you're going to see. It can be really confusing when you're first looking at this. It just looks like a bunch of numbers, different addresses everywhere. So I just kind of want to touch on like how you can track this. So basically what happens is this is always going in like a line. So on a buy transaction, you're starting at ETH and you're ending at tokens. On a sell transaction, which I'll show in a second, you're starting at tokens and you're ending at ETH. So on this one, for example, this is a buy transaction, and you can tell because they sent ETH in with it. And so you can basically start tracking the line of the transfer up here. So you can see that they transferred 0.85 ETH into the Uniswap router, and the Uniswap router transferred that into wrapped Ether. And then you can also see that the Uniswap router transferred this Ether back to, oh, is it echoing?
No, you're good.
I think, okay, got you. And then you can see that they sent this ETH back to this guy. And then down here, so now that it's a token, so up top is always going to be ETH transfers, and then the bottom is always going to be token transfers. So you can see that it went to wrapped ETH, and then the router transferred that wrapped ETH to the LP pair, which is basically how you buy. And then the LP pair transferred tokens. And because there was a tax, they transferred some tokens to the buyer and some tokens to the contract. So that's basically how you can track. It always goes in a line. So if you can just start at the line, you can actually see like what's going on with the tokens and the ETH and everything. Okay. So I'm just going to go to here and I'm just going to kind of go over what this is down here. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen it. So when you first come in here, it's going to show this. And then click to see more is actually how you see like what everything is in the transaction. So down here, you're going to see if there's a function or anything, it's going to have all this. If there's not, it's just going to show like a bunch of hex code and everything. And then to actually see what inputs they put in, if the contract is verified, you can actually hit decode input data. And then we'll go into like what all this means here in a second, but I just wanted to touch on that, the last thing on the transaction page. Cool. And then I'll go back and show a wallet. I'm actually going to show this one here. So yeah, this is going to be what a wallet looks like. There's going to be a bunch of different stuff in here. So this first tab that you're always going to be on is going to be transactions. And this is just basically any where I showed you the from and the to. If this wallet that you're looking at is the from or the to, then it's going to show in here. So basically any transaction from their wallet or to their wallet, you're going to see in here. And you can just see in here like a bunch of transfers in. I'll click all. And yeah, let me show you that, I guess. If you want to see, if it's only showing you 25 and you want to see more, you're just going to click here and you'll view the full list. And then sometimes there'll be more pages. On this one, there's not. So it's mostly transfers, and then you'll also see like all the functions and things that they've called, contract creation and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people, this is like the only thing that they know on Etherscan. But there's a lot more that you can actually click onto in the wallet, and you can get a lot more like, I guess you could say they're not really hidden, but they're kind of like not as looked for as much by like people that don't know. So there's also internal transactions. Basically what this is how do I explain it? So it's any transaction that involves the wallet, but it's not the to or the from. So like for example, if you guys have ever seen a contract that has like taxes for marketing, the marketing wallet, you'll never see funds coming in on this page, but because it's not the to or the from, but when the contract sells internally, it'll send funds to them. And so that'll always show up on here. Also, sometimes when you transfer in from like a centralized exchange, you'll also see the transactions in here. So you always want to make a good habit of coming and checking in here for things as well. And then ERC20 transactions is basically going to be every instance of a token, whether it be like a LP token, whether it be like Shiba Inu, any kind of token that actually gets transferred on ETH, you'll be able to see in and out in here. And then here you can also view all the tokens and everything that they're holding. But the easiest way, if you want to see like what someone's bought and sold, is to just come into this tab. So let's say you're looking at a deployer and you're looking for new contracts. Kind of the steps that I would go through and things you can look for. So first thing, let's say this contract was just deployed and you're wanting to see like, is there any links? What can we do? The first thing I always do is I'm going to go to the dev wallet first, just because I want to look for any red flags first before I look into anything else. So you're in the dev wallet. First thing you want to do is you want to see like, where did this developer get funds from? Is there any connections to any rug pulls in the past? Is there any connections to any good projects in the past? Anything like that? So this one here is actually the COD deployer. So this would have been obviously a good one you would have wanted to find. So you usually want to just scroll all the way to the beginning and just start from there and see if there's anything you can find. Let me actually, so one thing also, if you guys see here where it says in, and then on some of these it says out, the main thing you're going to want to look for is in transactions, because I can send a transaction out to anyone. I could send a transaction out to the SafeMoon deployer right now, and it's going to show that I transferred funds to the SafeMoon deployer, but that doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean that we're connected in any way. So if you're seeing a lot of out transactions connected to stuff, just kind of take it with a grain of salt. It may mean something, but it most likely doesn't. They're just trying to trick you. So you're mainly, when you're researching, you're going to want to be looking for in transactions. So I'd go to the very beginning here, and I'm just going to look at the first in transaction. And you can see that it was transferred in from a wallet that transferred in ETH from the Shiba Inu deployer. So instantly, that's a good sign. Obviously, you want to make sure that this is actually the Shiba Inu deployer and it's not just like a random, like an ENS or a random name or anything like that. But if you see any connections to like previous past coins, things like that, obviously that's a good sign, and that's something that you can use, and then you can continue to look a little bit further. Cool. So sometimes you're going to see transfers in, and when you click on the wallet, you're going to see a wallet that looks like this. A lot of people, when they're brand new to ETH, get really excited because you just see like, oh, the dev is rich. He has $12 million in. But most likely, or not most likely, for sure, this is a centralized exchange wallet. So just some of the things that you can look for to see if you're actually looking at like a real wallet or if you're looking at a centralized exchange wallet. So first thing off, most people aren't going to be holding this much money in their wallet, so that's already a red flag for me. The second thing that you can look at is the number of transactions. A normal person isn't going to have 10,000 transactions unless they've been doing ETH for years, and even then they're probably going to change wallets or something, so you're just not going to see that high number. But the biggest tell is if you're scrolling through this page and all you see is transfers. Like this one doesn't even have transfers in. So all you're seeing here is transfers out. It's pretty obvious that this is going to be a centralized exchange, and there's no reason to even consider that this is like a real wallet. And then I'll just pull up another one as an example. Same thing. All you see is transfers out. You see 158,000 transactions. It's not possible by a human. So you can just kind of disregard that. And then I'll show you this one here. Cool. So this one here, let's just say, this contract was just deployed. You pull up the dev wallet, and this is what you see. So you go down to the beginning, and you can see that there's no in transactions at all. But obviously, they had to get money in their wallet somewhere. So that's when you start looking through these other tabs. So we'll go to the internal transactions. And you can see that they got funds from the 1-inch router, and they most likely were trying to hide this, right? They didn't want it to show up on the main page. So we're going to look into this. So if you click the from wallet that did this transaction, you can go in and see that 14 days ago, they deployed a contract, they added liquidity, and within the same hour, they removed liquidity. So that's going to be an instant red flag. Obviously, this isn't someone that you want to support. You don't want to buy this contract because most likely they're going to do this again, and then they're going to transfer funds. And I believe if this is the one, if you keep going back, it's literally just like an endless trail of rugs where they just kept doing
Yeah,
this
just a
exact,
serial rugger.
yeah, literally just kept doing
Yep.
this exact same thing. And people kept buying because they didn't notice, they didn't know how to check these internal transactions, and they didn't know how to see this kind of stuff. One thing, I don't have an example, but sometimes also you can see if there's no internal transaction and there's no regular transaction from a wallet having funds in, it can also be an ERC20. So like let's say someone transferred from a centralized exchange and they transferred in USDC. It's not going to show up in either of these tabs. It's only going to show up here. So that'll be the third place to check where they got their funds from. But this one I wanted to show you guys. I think I saw someone ask as well in the AMA questions how you can tell a spoofed transaction. So basically you can see here, this is called Hive Moon. And basically if you come into ERC20 token transactions, a lot of people were getting excited when this launched because Ethereum Hive had launched, I think like the day before or 2 days before, and did amazing. And people saw that the Ethereum Hive deployer sent in tokens to this wallet, so they thought it was connected. So what you want to do to check to make sure that this is actually real is just click on the transaction hash. And you can see here that the from address isn't the Ethereum Hive deployer. The from address is actually the Hive Moon deployer. And they just took tokens and sent them from the Ethereum Hive deployer to themselves to make it look like that on the transaction. So basically what you want to check for to make sure a transaction isn't spoofed is that the from here and the from here actually match up. So you can actually see that this person sent the tokens that they're showing they sent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and in this case, you can see that the from is exactly the same as the
Yeah,
token
exactly.
transfers to
This
address. So he's just sending it to himself.
Exactly. This won't always be the case. They could send this from a different wallet, but yeah, you could see here pretty easily that he literally just sent tokens from this guy to himself just to make it look like there was a transaction in from the Hive deployer. So here, a lot of you guys, if you are new to Ethereum and if you're looking for a token, one of the big signs that you're looking for after it deploys to know if you can ape like a bigger amount and it's actually safe is that they're going to lock their tokens, which basically means that they can't pull the LP, and that they're going to renounce the ownership, which means they can't call any like malicious functions from the contract. But there's a lot of ways that you can fake those, and so a lot of people will do like fakes so that if someone's just looking base level, they see locked tokens, okay, good, I'm going to buy. But when you click into it, you can actually see that they didn't lock these tokens. So let me show you first what a real lock looks like. I think I have one. And I'll also show you how to check. So this is what a real LP lock looks like. You can see here for one that the LP, which is a token in itself, it's always going to be Uniswap v2 if it's on Uniswap. If not, it'll be Pancake, whatever theirs says is a token. And if they're going to lock it, there has to be a transfer here. If there's no transfer, then they didn't do anything with their tokens. They're still in their wallet and they didn't actually lock them. But here you can see that they sent their tokens from themselves to TrustSwap, which is a known LP lock. One thing, I've never seen it happen, but I always like to check to make sure that this TrustSwap that they put in here actually has transactions, because they could very easily scam that too. But I always just make sure that it's actually TrustSwap. And then also another thing, you want to make sure that they transferred all their LP tokens. So what you can do is you can actually click on the LP token and you can go to the holders and just make sure. So you can see here, like this wallet is still holding 11%, only 88% of it is locked. So that would be one red flag. It's probably not a big deal. It's probably just like LP that they got from taxes and they just need to lock it in the future. But it's just something to keep an eye on. If they only locked like 1 or 2%, that's a big trick they can do too. They can just only lock a tiny percent of it and make it look like they locked all the tokens. So you always just want to come and check here. Cool. And then the other thing is checking not only that they lock the tokens, but that they actually lock the tokens for like a sizable amount of time. So to figure that out, what you can do is you can come down here to the unlock time, and this is called a epoch timestamp. So we actually have in our Discord, we added a command. I'll put it in the AMA questions. So you can actually just do this command, and it'll actually reply to you with how long the lock is. But if you're not in our Discord, you can also just go to epochconverter.com. There's a bunch of these. You can just Google like epoch to time or something like that. And then you just put it in, and it'll tell you how long the actual lock is. So that's pretty easy. You just want to make sure that they're not locking for like 5 minutes or something, and you're thinking that it's locked, and then you go invest. And then let me show you what a fake lock looks like. So you saw this, there's tokens transferred, there's all this information. And you go back to this one, he says he locked tokens. You come into it, there's no transfer, so he couldn't have possibly locked because he didn't transfer his LP tokens anywhere. And then you come down and look at the data, and he put in a new wallet for it to transfer to, and it's not anything. It's just another wallet that he put in for the LP. So this doesn't actually do anything. He makes it look like he locked tokens, but nothing actually happens in this transaction. It's just like a useless call so that you see it on the deployer wallet. Cool. So this one, same thing. You see that he locked LP. We'll check. That's actually a real lock, so he did lock LP. And then when he goes to renounce ownership, you click into it, and you see that he actually is just using this to set his fees. So he probably set it to 2%, and then what did he set it after?
And yeah, then he
99. Yeah. So he basically used, I mean, honestly, if you saw this first one, even though he set fees to 2, the fact that he's using renounce ownership to set fees should be the first red flag. You shouldn't even
Yeah,
win
it's
when he
already.
sets it to 99. But yeah, so you want to, when you see a renounce ownership, you want to see down here that there's nothing inside these brackets, most likely. Or if there's anything, you should just see a bunch of zeros here. You should see like 0x0000 that he's basically transferring ownership to the dead address. And then someone just asked what a real renounce looks like. This is what it would look like. There shouldn't really be anything down here because it should just be in the code that it's renouncing it. If they're most of the time if they're putting anything in this, it's not a real renounce. These ones are a little bit harder to tell because this function can actually do anything in the code. So in probably like future AMAs, I'll go more deep into like the actual code and how you can tell like what they're doing. But for now, this is just kind of how to tell like the obvious fake renounces. Like a newer thing that people are doing is a fake liquidity pool to scare out snipers. So I just want to show you guys what that looks like. What is this? What that looks like so you know if someone's actually pulling liquidity or if they're just doing like a fake pull to get snipers out and then push the project. So if you come into the actual liquidity removal, you can click on it and you can see here that they actually only removed 0.03 ETH, which there's way more in the LP. So you can see that they were just doing this to scare out snipers. And like I'm sure you guys have seen screenshots and stuff like that of someone sending like a message in the code.
Yep.
Basically, all they're doing is they're sending these hex values that result in letters. And to check it, all you do is come down here and just click UTF-8, and you can actually see what the message is.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big one that a lot of people don't know about, and it happens quite often, especially on the ETH side. Not as much on BSC, but
yeah,
it's useful to know,
yeah.
especially considering a lot of the times devs will send themselves transactions to convey a message, whether that's a Telegram or socials or anything really that they'd like to others to know.
And if you ever want to know if something's a scam or legit, just don't listen to this guy because he probably doesn't know.
Yeah, he fuds like 99% of projects, so
yeah. Just
if
whatever
you
you
see
see
that,
from
just
him, just disregard it and do your own research.
disregard it. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And then I'm gonna go into a contract. And so basically, once you've done all your research as far as where's the funding from, if there's no red flags, or if there's even like I guess you could call it a green flag, like if you saw a really good deployer, the next thing to do would be to go into the actual contract. Okay, so once you pull up the contract, you're usually going to be over here. This is going to be the contract, what a contract looks like. You can see the same things, the internal transactions and all that. If it's verified, it's going to have this green check, and that's the only way that you can view this stuff. If it's not verified, that can also be a red flag, but it's not necessarily. But it's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind that you can't tell what's actually going on in it. If it is verified, though, you can come in here, and usually if there's socials, it's going to be commented out like this at the top. And so you can start doing more research if there's actually people looking into this, if they've put any effort into their website. If you click on a website and it's like it looks like it took 2 minutes to make, they're probably not going to care about the project. Just like kind of the common sense things.
Yeah. And
Um,
before you move on, let's just kind of go over why exactly developers don't verify contracts or why they do. Sometimes they won't verify contracts because they're unique and they don't want others copying them. Sometimes um, they won't they won't verify because they've hidden malicious functions in there. Sometimes they won't verify because they don't want snipers to figure out what exactly the anti-snipe measures they have put in place are, like dead blocks, for example. Um, so that's one thing, and other times they'll verify contracts as a sign of good will, I guess, and also just to show the socials off as well pre-launch. So
Yeah, for sure. And someone asked if it's the same with BSC scan. They're literally like the exact same. They're built off the same like framework and everything, so everything should be pretty much the same. The only thing that'll be really different would just be like the gas settings that we talked about earlier, but that's not a huge deal. But everything else will be the exact same on both.
yeah,
Cool. So I'll just kind of, so that's the socials. The next thing, if you don't know how to read all the code, one easy way to find some of like the information that you're looking for is just to click the read contract here. So you can see a lot of information here. So you could check, let's say you're looking for like what the max wallet is, you can click here and it's going to have a big long number. This isn't going to be like the actual max wallet. You'll have to come down here and get the decimals. So 9 decimals basically means that if you want to get the actual token amount, you have to take off 9 zeros. If it was 12 decimals, you take off 12 zeros, that kind of thing. And that's basically, and then you can also get like the marketing wallet and that kind of stuff in here. And then I also wanted to touch on kind of just like the basics of things you can look for. So most of like this top stuff in a contract is just like pre-built libraries that devs use to like make a token. Like ERC20 is like the standard that you have to use if you're making a token. The router is like the Uniswap router. These are just like things that you need. Where most of and they can hide things in here, so it's good to check. But most of the time, what you're mainly going to be looking for is where the contract actually starts. So it's going to say like contract, and then it's going to say the name of the token, and this is where you're going to actually start like reading all the valuable information. So one of the things you're probably going to want to look for, you don't really need it now as much because there's scanners and everything that tell you the taxes. But if you don't have that, you can come down here and get the taxes. So you can see that this one is just 8% marketing fee. And then the one important thing to look at is the denominator. Um, so a lot of times you guys might see like a developer call a function called set fees, and they put like 90, 90, 90, and it looks like they're pulling a rug, or 30, 30, 30, whatever. It looks like they're pulling a rug, but the denominator will be 1,000. So if you do 30 divided by 1,000, it's really just 3. So all they're really doing is they're setting the fees to 3%. But because the denominator's at 1,000, they have to add an extra 0, and it looks like they're honeypotting. So that's just one thing to look out for, is if you see like a big number when someone's setting fees, make sure to check the denominator and see if it's at 100, 1,000, 10,000, so you can figure out what they're actually setting the fees to. And then I also wanted to touch on like a lot of people are very like curious as to like how you can detect like hidden mint functions and things like that in the contract. Um, I'll cover it more in detail in a future AMA, just because it's really hard. There's a lot of different ways that a developer can do like a hidden mint. Some of them are really easy to spot, some of them aren't so easy to spot. But I just wanted to kind of cover some of like the ones that you guys see that like look scary and they're not actually mint functions. So like this one doesn't even have it. I thought I had one.
You could pretty much pull like every other contract on ETH and find something like that.
Yeah. Let me just look at this. Let me look at Dosa real quick.
And like half of them are just for the tokens to even be minted in the first place. So
Yeah, so like a basic mint function in every contract is this underscore mint. Let me find where it's actually at here. So it's going to be this. It's going to say function underscore mint internal. So anytime you see internal in a contract, it means that the dev can't call this. It can only be called from inside the contract. So this isn't really something that you need to worry about at all. I see it like literally every day. Someone freaks out about a mint function inside a contract, and it's just this. If you ever see the word internal, it means that it can only be called somewhere else. So you want to look for where it's being called. So we'll keep going through here and see if there's any other mint. Yeah, so the only other time this is called is in the constructor. So the constructor is basically like it's a function that's only called once, and it's called when the contract is deployed. So if you see this inside the constructor, it basically just means that this is just the contract making the tokens in the first place and giving them to a dev. So that's not really something to be alarmed about. And then the one other place you'll see it is this one doesn't have an interface. Let me go back to the other one. I don't think this one has it, but sometimes you'll see like here it says interface. This is basically just here so that they can use this to call another contract. So like if you need to call the Uniswap router to buy tokens from inside your contract, you're going to have an interface here. So if you see a mint inside of this, it's not even a function that's inside this contract. It's just it's a function that's inside another contract that they're trying to use. So you don't have to be worried about that either. But if you ever see like something that says like, let me just find like if you ever see like, let's say this said mint external, and then it's like transferring tokens to the dev wallet, like that would be something to be concerned about. But as long as it doesn't say external here or public, if it says internal, then it's not anything to worry about. And like I said, in a future AMA, I'll go more in depth into like the code and show you like a bunch of different examples on like how they can do hidden mints, how they can do hidden renounces that actually rug, and a lot of different things like that.
yeah, yeah. Most of the time, though, you won't have the time to
Right,
even go
yeah.
into the contract to look for these kinds of things, especially on ETH and on BSC, where you want to get in as early as possible. So you don't really look for these sort of things before aping. You'll look at some of the basic things like if it's a real lock, if it's a real renounce, that kind of stuff,
Yep.
before going into the code itself. Oftentimes, you'll see projects and developers actually they won't lock the tokens, but they'll send them to like a dead address, and it'll just show up as a transfer function. All that means is that they're sending tokens to a wallet address that they'll never be able to recover it from. So
Yeah,
you
I'll
can
show that too.
essentially think of it as lost forever
Yeah,
or
so
burned,
it would
is
show
what they would
this
say.
it would show the same kind of thing, but this would be like it would either be 0x and all zeros, or it would be 0x and all zero, and then the last four would be dead or something like that. They would transfer their LP or their tokens to that address. So that's how you would see that.
Yep.
And then one last thing I'll show you guys. So yeah, like he was saying, most of the time, you're not really having, if it's like something that you're looking on the deployer and you're trying to get in quick, you're not going to have time to really look at all this. Most of this, like more in-depth stuff is like if you're trying to invest big, like a big bag in something like more serious, and you just want to make sure it's legit. But I just wanted to show you guys the if you guys don't have the tough bot, they have a Telegram where you can view a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is where you guys can see like if you guys ever need to see just like quick things about a project, like if it's a rug, if it's going to be a honeypot, anything like that. This is basically where I look for deploys. Obviously, you can see there's a bunch of other ones over here. But this is just like the quickest information. It's gonna, as soon as it's deployed, it's gonna simulate it, and it's gonna figure out the max transaction, the max wallet, the buy tax. Sometimes if there's a hidden mint function here, it'll show that. But the biggest thing I like is this. Here it shows a checksum, and this is basically like a unique identifier that only works or is unique to this type of contract. So like if you're looking for like if this says like 2 or 3 for example, this one obviously is used by like everyone. It looks like it's 1400 times. But sometimes you'll see a unique one, like actually the other day, Kings.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go
Um,
ahead and post those links for those who don't know in the AMA section, AMA question section. It's a free resource you guys can use if you'd like to find contracts that are being deployed as fast as possible.
yes, the
So I'm just
other
gonna go ahead and post
day.
that.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
There you go. Yep,
The other
we're good.
day, one of our members, I think it was Diva, right? Diva. He
Yep.
posted that there was King's Coin and it was the same contract used as another token called Hydra. So I just want to show you kind of how you could find that. So if you see here, it says checksum. It shows this, and this contract was only used 3 times. So you can tell that that's a unique contract, and a lot of devs will reuse their contracts because they don't want to rewrite it. So what you could do is you can actually take this checksum and you could search up here and you could see that his last token was Hydra. And I don't know exactly what the market cap or whatever it was for Hydra, but it did really well. So this was just kind of like an early signal that maybe this is the same dev, and this is something that you want to look into further. So that's another way that you can look for links. Cool. That should be pretty much everything, unless you have something else that I didn't cover that you can think of.
No, that's pretty much it. I guess we can take questions from the audience. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people asking how to find ETH projects early. I mean, we've pretty much
Okay,
covered it
yeah.
right here, but we'll go ahead and take some more questions and things that you guys are wondering as well. So let's just go ahead into the AMA questions and go from there. Uh, yeah.
How to add liquidity yourself without being one of the team, like what happened on Dosa. That was kind of like a unique situation. We won't go like completely into it, but Unicrypt, the way that it works, just like when you find it, when the contract, when the pre-sale finishes, anyone can call the function to finalize it. So Sniper just happened to call that function and buy at the same time. That was kind of like a unique case. How to check the CA can't sell, although that's
Oh, yeah.
another one
Yeah, yeah.
we'll probably have to cover like more in detail in a later one where we can actually go into the contract and start like teaching you guys code to look for. But there's a lot of different ways where they can hide like the actual honeypot of it, and they can make it look like it's not a honeypot. Sometimes those are just going to happen. There's not really anything you can do to avoid them sometimes unless you can read the code. And most of the time, those kind of contracts aren't verified anyways. So, but yeah,
Yeah, you're taking a
you just kind of
risk.
have to take those losses and just do what you can to obviously avoid them.
A lot of the times it'll show that the buy tax and sell tax are normal. They're not like honeypots or whatever, like 5 and 5, 5% buy, 5% sell, but you won't be able to sell. And a lot of the times it's because there's no actual, they've limited the transaction amount or their sell limit or something like that. So you won't actually be able to sell the tokens, but the taxes will stay the same as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of the bots are pretty malfunctional sometimes, especially like Honeypot, Suspot on Telegram, and they'll show things that aren't actually the case.
How do you identify contracts with functions to catch snipers or a mint function from Etherscan? We kind of covered that. I'll just show you guys
Yeah,
like
just the
where.
anti-snipe measures, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I won't go like too deep into like how to read the code and everything. But whenever I'm looking for anti-snipe measures, the first thing I'm gonna do, like I said, is come to the beginning of this contract and just look for any like weird variables, like anything that says like sniper anti-bot or like dead blocks or anything like that. That'll give me a good idea. But the main thing is it's always going to be in this transfer function. So whenever you buy or sell, a token is transferred. And so this is where all the antibot is always going to be, is in the transfer section. So if you want to start kind of like learning like how to read it, this is kind of where you want to start, and just start reading through contracts, seeing what they're doing, and kind of try to learn from that. But like I said, in future AMAs, we'll go more into detail on like how you can look for these kind of things in different antibot.
Yeah, and the fastest way, because you guys are gonna have any time to really go through these contracts before they launch. A lot of the times they'll deploy and then they'll launch like right after. The fastest way is either just to simulate it using ToughBot, or just go into their free Telegram service, and it'll show you a list of the functions that are known, and some of them will be unknown, and you can see what exactly the anti-snipe measures are, just in case. There are a couple of resources that will link and that are already linked in the resources section that we have in the Discord that you guys can go ahead and check out.
Yep. What is a good example of good wallet distribution ratio, and what would you would you consider that when doing on-chain analysis? Um, that's kind of a hard one. I'd say the biggest thing to look at is not just like the percentage that wallets are holding, but what percentage are they holding in ratio to the LP. Like if the LP is holding 50% and there's a couple 1%, 2% wallets, it's not that big of a deal. But if the LP is holding, 1% or 2% and there's 1%, 2% wallets, then obviously it's a bigger deal because they can drain it.
Yeah, it can
Um,
nuke the whole LP. Yeah.
yeah, so just really looking at the ratio, and then also deciding based on like is there a bunch of max wallets because those are big influencers that are holding it and pushing it far, or is it just like a scam where the team gave themselves wallets? Like there's a lot to take into consideration. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is just like the ratio.
That's a good answer. Also, something to look out for is like airdrops, whether the team hid them and whatnot. Something always to take into account. Usually they're for influencers. Sometimes the team will hide those airdrops um, for themselves, and that's always something that you can pretty much look out for. They're usually hidden in developer wallet address. Like you'll see whoever has access to those tokens airdropping it, and on the rare occasion it'll be built into the contract, which we've experienced a couple times before. But those are, especially on unverified contracts, almost impossible to tell
Yeah, yeah,
unless
yeah.
you go into the code.
One thing you can look for on there is like if you look on Dex tools, I'll just show you like on Dex tools, you can see like there's only one case really where I've ever seen where there was like hidden airdrops where you couldn't see it anywhere. And so you can see like on Dex tools, it'll show you buys and sells here. And so if you're starting to see like a lot of big sells and they didn't have any buy transactions, sometimes that could be a red flag. So you'll want to look like deeper into the transaction. And actually,
Yeah, sometimes it's just
let me
sometimes it's
show
just
you
Dex
guys
tools,
something.
like older
Yeah.
transactions you won't be able to see, but a lot of the times early in a project when it's just launching and you don't actually see that they have any buy transactions on Dex tools and they're selling, it's most likely that they got airdropped tokens. So always look into the token, uh,
Yeah,
the
so
transaction hash.
one thing I forgot to show, so if you guys didn't know, let's say you're looking at like a token buy here, you can actually click, so like you can see that they transferred DOSA. So if you click on their address, not up here, but if you click down here, it'll actually bring you to a list, and it filters all their transactions for this token. So you can actually just see like a little list of everything that they've done. So for example, like the case that we were just talking about, if there's no in transaction for these tokens and there's out transactions, that's obviously a red flag because the tokens have to come from somewhere. So that's something that you can do to quickly just see like where do they get these tokens from? Are they a pre-sale buyer? Did they buy these or anything like that? Just to show that again, you just come in the transaction and then click on this first side over here on the wallet that you want to see, and it'll bring you to this. And then someone asked what's the best way to start learning Solidity, which for those of you guys that don't know is like the programming language for token contracts. The best way, in my opinion, is just go to YouTube and start watching like the tutorial, either depends how you learn, but for me, YouTube videos on like the basics, and then from there, just looking at a ton of contracts and starting to like implement and like wrap my brain around everything that I learned, and then also starting to just code on your own, so you start to understand it better. Yeah, just basically put in the hours, learn everything that you can. I used to like whenever like a contract like accidental honeypotted, I would go and try to figure out like what happened exactly and try to help the team fix it, just to kind of like work my brain and try to learn it better, stuff like that.
Oh, this is a good question we
Oh,
can cover. How come some deployers get the same contract address in one chain, which also exists in the other chain?
that's actually a great question. I don't know the specifics on that. I assume
You can
it's
actually see on BSC scan as well. If
yeah.
you if we just need to find an example there, but usually, I guess, can you just click on the contract for me, Profound?
With this contract?
No, no, like on the top right, just the contract, or
Yeah,
profile
yeah, yeah.
summary, contract, and just go to the top right where it says B1, the B at the top left, in the middle. Yeah, B1. You can see what exactly that address has
Oh
been
yeah, I got you.
doing on other chains, and that's an easy way to tell whether or not it exists on another chain as well. You can do
Yeah.
that for different addresses as well. It's really really useful.
Yeah, I was actually
That's
just
something
about to
also we
touch on
forgot to
that.
cover.
Gope, he just asked a question about that too. So yeah, it's a
Yep.
one really good habit to get into is if you have the time and you've checked everything else, to just take the address, check it on Avalanche, BSC, Scan, Chronos, anything, just to see if they've done any like rugs or any shady things on there, or if they've done any good projects on there. 'Cause a lot of times they won't think to hide that stuff because most of the time people aren't looking at it, and I even forget to look for it most of the time.
Yeah. Someone else asked. Let me see. What did they say? They said, "How can you tell if a developer bots his own launches with multiple wallets?" I mean, there's not really any way to tell unless there's a direct link, but what you can look out for is fresh wallets that are the first buyers. Um, that can either signify insiders who bought early, or the dev just botting his own launches, and you can see that um, pretty clearly if you go into the transactions. Just look for the to look into the wallet address, and see if there's been any other previous transactions, where it was funded, if it was funded from the same place. Like, say for example, there were 4 wallets and they all were funded from Binance 16 or Poocoin, um, and around the same time periods they were funded at, you can pretty much assume that it's um, someone who doesn't want their previous wallets known, and it's probably an insider or the developer.
Yeah, another thing too, like if they're blacklisting like certain wallets and they leave out like four or five, you can start to tell that like okay, they just let early buyers in and then only blacklisted the ones that aren't them. You can look for like whitelist, things like that too.
Yeah, hopefully that answers that question. It's pretty much all you can really do.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna happen sometimes. You just, I mean, take profits on the way up just in case they. I mean that's just a good habit anyways. Even if it's not the team, snipers are snipers. Like just make sure you're taking some initials on the way up, and that way if it does get dumped, at least you have something.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world, but and it happens often. Sometimes they'll do it just to hold the price floor. Maybe they'll burn the tokens later, and sometimes it's really just malicious and they're botting it just to dump on you. But yeah,
Someone asked, sometimes when a project is launched, I can't get in through Uniswap. When I press swap, it hangs for a second and goes back to the swap menu. Is that because I'm being front run? Most of the time, if nothing, like if MetaMask doesn't pop up, it's because it's either a honeypot or something's going to stop that transaction from going through. It could be like your slippage. It could be
yeah,
just
it
because
could
the
be a lot of
token isn't
things.
viable, but something's going wrong where the token wouldn't let you buy, so it's not even popping up MetaMask for you to try buying. And the
Yeah,
same thing if you see like if you go to buy or do a contract interaction and it pops up and says it's going to cost like a half an ETH, don't send that through. Obviously, there's something wrong, so you need to figure out what the issue is.
yeah. Someone asked, the buy tax is 10%. My transaction failed because I used 10 to 15 slippage. If I set 49% slippage on the pancake swap, I have to pay tax buy tax over 10%. how to check this function in the contract. And the simple answer is no. Slippage and tax are not the same thing. You're not actually paying the whatever you set your slippage at. That's just that's just the limit that you've set for the price to move before the transaction fails. So the actual tax that you're paying on that case is still 10%. It doesn't really matter what the uh, slippage you set at is.
Yeah, and then also if it is a 0% tax token on ETH, just make sure that you're not doing crazy high slippage. Like if the tax is 5, maybe do 15 if you're okay losing a little bit of your tokens, but don't go too crazy because you'll get sandwich spot, which basically means they buy before you and sell after you, and you basically lose like 50% of the tokens you were supposed to get.
Yeah. Kate. Kate just asked, which section do we see what deployer is doing? I always want to get out before they're approving the transaction to rug in live action, but I've seen people that were helping me look at it. So the way the way you can see it is just
There's
going into the deployer wallet. Profound will
yeah,
actually just pull it up right now.
and then up here, you're always going to see it's going to say contract creator. And this address right here, the first address here is going to be the contract creator. It won't always have a name, it'll have an address or whatever, but that'll always be the contract creator. And then the only thing is like with Etherscan, a lot of times it doesn't refresh right away. So you have to either be like refreshing constantly, or you have to, yeah, or you have to use some other site to see like pending transactions if
Like,
that's what you want to see.
yeah, pending transactions. And there's actually a good one out. It's called CoinScan. You can just pull up CoinScan if you want. Profound, which is coinscan.com. Shout out to Guns and the CoinScan team. You can just go here, paste any contract.
We'll just go.
Just go here, paste the contract, go to
Well, this is
the
sponsored
page.
by Dosa, by the way. Go buy some Dosa.
Yeah. Go through here and then you can actually see the developer transactions on the left-hand side. Um, yeah,
Sorry, still
developer transactions. Yeah, this isn't live just yet. It's still in beta phase, so it's not working properly just yet. The best way to do it um, is to go into Etherscan and just constantly refresh. Or if you're using a bot, then just have the method ID set of the function that's being called so that you can exit early. But that's something that we're going to be covering in our next segment of our educational series. So it's not something we'll cover now, but we will in the future. But these are just, I guess, the only two options that you have. Just Etherscan going to the developer, going to the deployer wallet. But that really only works if the ownership isn't transferred, which is something that we should mention as well. If they've transferred the ownership to a different wallet address, then you just need to go into that transaction, click on the new owner, and then from there you'll be able to see um, all the functions that he's calling.
Oh, that's another thing to check too. Just when you do, let me see if this one has it. Yeah, so one way you can spot a fake renounce too, I just thought about it, is when you come in after they renounce, if you check the owner, this owner should be 0x00 or 0x dead. If it's still showing the dev wallet and they called renounce, then it didn't actually renounce. It didn't do anything. That's just like
Yep.
a secondary way that you can check the owner and make sure that the ownership was actually transferred. Red trade button on Poocoin. Normally that means that this is a normally it means that it's actually a honeypot, but not always. Sometimes it's a false flag. So the red button is basically like a alert to tell you not to buy it because it's a red flag. But am I connected?
Sometimes trading won't be enabled.
Yeah.
Liquidity will be ended. You won't be able to trade because obviously they've disabled trading. Sometimes you'll still be able to swap the token even though the button is red. That's just
Yeah.
something in the contract that they must
So
have overlooked.
if for some reason there is like a false flag and you know for sure that it's legit, one thing you can do is you can come up here and you can hit where it says trade, and then you can hit these settings and you can actually hit enable swap on all tokens. Just in case you do want to trade while it's red, it'll let you trade. It'll still show red, but it'll actually let you click it to trade.